So as we've been talking about this powerful law of attraction, which is the reason that you create your own reality, now we are wanting to talk to you about something that most of you are sort of hard of hearing about. And what that is the value that it would be to you if you would decide today to begin to find, to try to find, to sniff out, to try to find, and then to follow your path of least resistance. But before you can understand what your path of least resistance is, you got to understand how strong the current is that's calling you to your abundance, to your wellness, to your clarity, to your knowing, to your love. So when you find someone who is really a rascal, and we know you've looked hard for them and you've found quite a few of them, and you've labeled them, you know where they are, and no matter how far back in your past they live, you can go find them anytime you choose. And there are plenty of others who will talk with you about them if you get them engaged, because they've got some just like them and they will vent with you. So as you give your attention to something like that and you feel the discord of it, early on, right away, you feel the discomfort of it. You can feel whether you're clear or confused. You can feel whether you feel good or whether you don't. You can, whether you admit it or not, you can feel the difference between words of appreciation and words of condemnation. You can feel the difference. And the reason that we know that so clearly is because we know the source within you and how the source within you feels. You see, the source within you, your inner being, Abraham, whatever you want to call this non-physical cadre who has your back, who is aware of you, we are not threatened by anything because we understand the laws of the universe. We know that you create your own reality, and we know that we do too. So we're not worried about some rascal who seems to be projecting something that is unwanted, because we know that that rascal does not have any ability to get into your experience unless you invite it through your attention. We also know you have to give quite a bit of attention to it before you create a vibrational thread that gives you access to this thing that you do not want. So since there is no assertion in this law-based universe that is based on attraction, since there is no assertion, no one is coming after you. Sometimes it feels like they did, and sometimes it feels like they got you because you weren't paying attention to what you were doing, and so you were offering a vibration that you didn't realize you were offering. And so when it manifested, you say it came out of the blue, and we say no, it didn't. It came out of the oblivious. It came out of the unaware. It came out of the offering a pattern of vibration for a period of time, for a long enough period of time that you started a point of attraction, and you were unaware of the point of attraction, usually because it feels so normal, or maybe even so normal, or maybe even so normal. And so you've got this sort of normal feeling, so you're not aware of it until it manifests. So it's like this. You've got a trajectory or a path of least resistance, and when you deviate from it, you can feel it in the early stages. It feels like negative emotion. But if you don't notice it, don't worry. Law of attraction makes both trajectories stronger. So who you really are gets stronger, and who you're being gets stronger, until the crevasse between who you really are and what you really want, and who you're being and what you really don't want. In other words, this crevasse gets stronger and stronger, and eventually there's a manifestation. And then you say, hey, why are you asserting this unwanted thing in my experience? So Esther has been so eager, just lapping up this business of path of least resistance. She's decided to give herself permission to do what feels best to her. And she's decided not to try so hard to get everybody else to affirm with her that it is the right thing to do. In other words, would you please validate me and confirm with me that this decision that I've made is the best for everybody? That's not how it works. You can't decide for everybody. You can only decide for yourself, you see. So Esther's been listening to us. She listens to us. She can't hear us as clearly as you do under these conditions, but afterward, she listens to every word we speak, sometimes many times, as she's processing recordings and listening. So Esther is listening to what we're saying about path of least resistance, and she's beginning to feel stronger and clearer and more ready to serve herself, more ready to do the things that feel best to her, and more willing to not try so hard to figure out how everybody else is going to feel about the thing that she's decided. Because when she tries to figure out what you or anyone thinks about what she's decided, then she introduces resistance to her path, and then she doesn't have clarity, and then she wants to blame you or whoever it is. So she made a few decisions recently, sort of tiptoeing down the path of least resistance. Oh, that feels good. Oh, yeah, that feels good. Oh, that really feels good. Oh, I really think I'm on the path. So then after the seminar last weekend, she went with a friend here in Los Angeles, over in Glendale, to a restaurant, took her beautiful new Denali. So beautiful. 2015, black, shiny, gorgeous, everything that you would want on it. So she drove to the restaurant and pulled into the valet parking place and asked where the restaurant was. And he said, it's about 3 lights down. Well, that seemed a little too far to walk. So they decided to drive it. So they drove down. It wasn't 3 blocks. It was only half a block. And there was a parking garage. And so they drove through the parking garage because it seemed fun. And Esther thought, oh, I think I'll just go back and give it back to the original valet parker. He'll think that's funny when I show up again. So she went right through the parking garage, beautiful parking garage, came out the other end of it, pulled right back to the valet parker and left the car. Walked with her friend and sat there all afternoon. Had wonderful food, wonderful conversation, figured everything in the world out. It was just delicious. And then she went back and her car was parked on the street, not what she expected. And she said, oh, there's my car. And then she said, no, it isn't. As she noticed, there was a big blue tarp over the back of it. No, that's not my car. Oh, that is my car. Oh, that's my car. And the valet parker, man, boy, child, standing there, Esther was certain he would look green. He looked green. He was green. And Esther said, that is my car. And he said, your car did something crazy. It opened the back window as I was parking it, and it sort of tore the back window off. And Esther said, I can see that. I can see that. That's interesting because my car has never done anything like that before. It's never done anything like that before. So he gave her a form. Esther is laughing because she knows that she creates her own reality. And she can hardly wait to figure this one out. Because it seemed like this person did this to her. This perfectly beautiful car, she put it in the hands of this perfectly, formerly capable looking person. And he managed to rip the back window off the thing. And so, as Esther is thinking about it, no problem, it drives. She drove back to San Diego in it with friends. It was very loud. And they were laughing and having a good time. And now it is in the repair shop, and it will be repaired, and it will be as good as new. But here is the thing that Esther understood with a little bit of pondering. Yes, it's easy for me to take the path of least resistance because the path of least resistance is really clear to me as it unfolds. I can feel it. And we're going to show you how to feel it too as we're moving forward here today. I can feel it. But then there's a tendency. Once you've taken what you know for sure at the time you took it was the path of least resistance, that you begin to collect other information from others who are not approving of the path of least resistance that you took. And then you sometimes, nearly every time, look back, Esther did it for sure, and try to justify your taking your path of least resistance by pointing out why it was important that you took that path. And we said to Esther, as she was visiting with us about it, she sat down all light and happy, really, and wanted to know, so, you dead ghost, what do you have to say about this? And we said, we think it is wonderful that you are taking the path of least resistance. And we love how good you feel when you are doing it. And if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would spend no time looking back in any sort of justification of anything that you've decided, because that'll get your back window blown out. We want you to know that everything that happens to you without exception is coming in response to the vibrations that you are offering, in response to the desires you offer and the belief that you hold about the current thing. Nothing is arbitrary, nothing is accidental, everything is about something. If you pay attention, now we would encourage you to pay attention at the earlier subtle stages. In other words, pay attention when you've decided something and now you're justifying it. Feel how justification feels. Feel how defending feels. Feel how rationalization feels. Feel how digging your heels in against someone who doesn't agree with you feels. Feel how that feels. And at the early subtle stages, you can close that gap easily. But if you don't worry, it will get bigger. It will get bigger, 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 until it's big enough that you understand that you have a vibrational variance, because things are always working out for you, aren't they? Aren't things always working out for you? So it doesn't matter where you stand. Esther could explain to you, she sort of kind of wants to, how many nice people she's met along the way as she's having this window repaired and as she's renting this car and then this car and then this car. In other words, nothing has gone wrong. Everything is just fine. But really, if she would really tell you how it really is, she would have preferred that her back window had stayed intact. She really would have preferred that. That really would have been the path of least resistance. Now, is it the end of the world that it didn't? Certainly not. Can she go back and undo that? Certainly not. Can she live before that happened and start again? Certainly not. Can she stand right where she's standing and choose the next path of least resistance? Yes, she can. So the first step of it, as she's standing there looking at her car, was to look at this man who was so frightened and say to him, it's okay. It's okay. Stuff happens. Stuff happens. Stuff happens. And then she said, I take responsibility for the stuff that happens to me and mine. And he looked at her like, you are the weirdest person that I've ever met in my entire life. Esther is fairly certain that somehow, and when he was trying to lock it or unlock it, he managed to push the button that opened the window and didn't know it until he heard the loud crash. In other words, it's sort of logical about what happened in terms of when it was way down the road. She tried to miss that guy. She drove past him completely, drove right through the parking garage. In other words, the path of least resistance was unfolding to her. But she had something stuck in her vibrational craw that she needed to figure out. And this sweet man helped her figure it out. Helped her figure it out. There is always a cooperative component that will help you figure it out. There are cooperative components everywhere. You've got to accept them as cooperative components. They're not bastards. They're not renegades. They're not monsters. They're not trying to make your life harder. They're just doing what they do in relationship to the vibrational frequency that you've got going. And if you've got split energy about something, you're not very powerful. But if you will take the time to line up with who you are, if you will follow your path of least resistance, if you will take to heart what that really means, if you will care about how you feel, and you will catch your vibrational frequencies in the early subtle stages, then you don't have to have manifestations that are unpleasant. But what the heck? How bad really can physical manifestations be? Some of them take you out. You croak. You say, oh, what a bad physical manifestation that was. We say, not really, not really. You just moved into a place of absolute non-resistance where you have clear view of everything. In other words, nothing ever really goes wrong. But there is a question about how much discomfort you are willing to put up with for yourself. And the answer to that really lies in how willing are you to follow your path and not work so hard at trying to make everybody else's path the right path for them. You don't have the chops to make their path work for them. You don't have the data, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the vibrational intention, you don't have the vibrational integrity, you don't have the emotional guidance system. You cannot do a good job of making anybody else's life work for them. That's their job.